You're listening to Health Coach Conversations, a podcast where our conversations help health coaches all around the world to level up our businesses and to get more clients. Hello and welcome. I am Kathy Sikora, founder of the Health Coach Group, and I am here today to talk with Lisa Fraley, one of our favorite people to interview. She's an attorney, legal coach, speaker, and a #1 best-selling author of Easy Legal Steps that are also good for your soul. And that's one of the most interesting legal books you can ever read. She's also the host of the Legally Enlightened podcast on iTunes as a holistic lawyer. Lisa blends her legal expertise as a former healthcare attorney in a large corporate law firm and the care of a health coach through IIN and life coach through Coach U. She's helped thousands of heart-centered coaches, entrepreneurs, and holistic practitioners protect their businesses and brands with contracts, disclaimers, trademarks, and more. Lisa shares her legal love through DIY legal templates, online courses, and one-on-one services, and has spoken on stages from British Columbia to the Bellagio. Lisa's mission is to help small business owners understand that the law can be accessible, empowering, loving, and even spiritual, and she's uniquely known for aligning legal steps and the chakras. Lisa's a graduate of Case Western Reserve University School of Law's nationally ranked health law program and holds a certificate in sustainable business strategy from Harvard Business School online. I'm going to start with this question. Sylvie wrote the questions today, but I have a few because I was at a conference last week.
Oh.
And I sat next to a doctor. She's a psychiatrist or psychologist, but she's been working with youth and she's really burned out and she wants to build her business up and go online.
Oh boy.
But she's afraid to hire anybody because of HIPAA.
Yeah.
And
well, she can hire other therapists.
Yeah, she could hire somebody, but even like health coaches, if she had them do just the habit stuff.
Yeah. It's tricky. Right. Okay. So for a psychologist who is burned out totally working with kids and just burned out doing the day-to-day that psychologists do, and we thank them so much for the work that they do, but I understand it can get a little exhausting. Where the risk or the trick is for them is that anyone who's licensed, Kathy, can only work with people in states where they're licensed. So if she wants to call herself a psychologist or do any work in the mental health space at all that falls under her license, she can only do that in the states where she's licensed with her patients. And yes, she does have to follow HIPAA. So if she wants to have a health coach help in some way in the practice, the health coach, first of all, can't do anything related to mental health. So that's the first thing that requires a license. And the second thing is, if the psychologist wants to go online and reach people all over, then the psychologist won't be able to use their title of a psychologist. They won't be able to use their licensure title. So the psychologist, I recommend, needs to go get health coach training too, so that they can open up a health coaching business. Because the trick with anyone who's licensed is that, like I always say, it's a choice. You either are licensed and work with patients in the states where you're licensed, you get to do more in that you can work with diagnoses and treatment, but you're confined to where your patients are located in the states where you're licensed. Okay. If you're a health coach, you have the ability to work with people everywhere, but you're confined as to what you can actually do and say. You can't work with disease states or diagnoses or anxiety or depression or anything that's a disease state as a health coach. Yes, you can teach healthy habits. You can teach what food to eat, although not in a therapy practice, right? Because therapy doesn't include food in the scope of practice. But a health coach can help people just on their own, teaching people about what food to eat and whatnot, depending on the state that health coach is located in. So there's a couple of options for the psychologist. One, get a health coaching certificate and become a health coach, and then work with people everywhere, but not hold yourself out as a psychologist, not say I'm a psychologist, nothing with your licensure. And the other option is, if the psychologist just wants to do an online course to teach people concepts, but is not working one-on-one with anyone, just teaching educational concepts. What is depression? What is anxiety? What are the kinds of things people do if they do have depression or anxiety, but not working one on one? Then the psychologist can teach a general educational course or a DIY self study course, like all the great ones that you have, Kathy, that you offer, but not, it has to still be in the scope of practice. So the psychologist can't do anything with food because that's not in the scope of practice. So you're either holding yourself as a psychologist and working one on one in states where you're licensed, or teaching general education, no one on one, or you're a health coach and you work one on one, but you can't do mental health treatment in any way whatsoever.
That makes sense.
It's
So, some of the people out there, and I'm not going to say names, but say that there's doctors that are held up as experts in the industry and they're hiring health coaches to work with people. How do you do that? How do you emulate that?
Yes. Okay. Couple things. One, first of all, it will depend on the type of doctor, right? So most doctors that are MDs, DOs, and NDs, naturopathic doctors, those that are licensed, are allowed to do nutrition in their scope of practice. Okay. So the doctor is the one who's seeing the patient. The health coach who gets hired by the doctor can help the doctor with accountability for any type of nutrition program that the doctor is recommending to the patient. But the health coach can't address medical issues, diseases, and conditions either. The health coach can be aware of them. Like the doctor can say, this patient has diabetes. The health coach can say, great, good to know. Let's teach you how to balance your blood sugar. But any question that the patient is asking the health coach about, what about my A1C? What about my insulin? Those questions all have to be directed back to the doctor. So the health coach can't do anything medically. They can only help with accountability of the steps that the doctor is recommending. The other trick about that is they have to be in the states where the doctor is licensed. So the doctor and the health can't just work with people everywhere. The doctor is still a doctor and has patients, but can hire a health coach to help with the patients. So that's what is allowable, as long as the health coach and the doctor have the awareness of what falls into whose scope, basically.
So, if there was a doctor in Arizona, they would need to hire a health coach in Arizona, right?
Not
No?
necessarily. It's just that they can only deal with patients in Arizona.
Okay.
The health coach can be from another green state, cannot
Mhm.
be from a red state, has to be from a state with a broad nutrition law that allows them to work one on one with people. And so the doctor can hire a health coach from somewhere else. It's just that the patients and the doctor's practice can only be from Arizona,
That makes sense. The
because that's where
patients need to
now if the
be
doctor's
where
licensed
they.
in California and Washington and Oregon, great. They can work with people in those states too. But doctors are doctors and health coaches are health coaches.
Mhm.
And so if a doctor wants to become a health coach, they need to go get trained as a health coach and become a health coach. They can't, or they can educate people from their medical background, but not, they can't cross the two. They have to be separate because one is licensed and one is not.
Okay. I have another question.
Yeah.
These are things that are popping into my head. These aren't prepared.
No, these are great questions. And Kathy, they come up all the time, as
Yeah.
you can imagine, with my clients who I work with so many people now who are licensed, and so many people
Mhm.
hiring health coaches, and so many people who get really frustrated. And I just want to pause for a second and like express my compassion at how frustrating this is, because I'm being really clear and direct about what you can and can't do because I don't want people to get in trouble. But my heart goes out because I'm a holistically minded person too, just as you are, Kathy. We were trained at IIN and I am a health coach, even though I work mostly as a lawyer. But it's frustrating when we want to be holistic and help people holistically and reach people farther and wider. But the law just isn't still quite there yet. So we have to figure out what we can do and how we can do it in legal ways so that they don't jeopardize people's licenses or that people don't get investigated for the unlicensed practice of medicine.
Right. That's important. That's
Yeah.
really important.
Yeah.
Okay, so my next question about functional medicine versus functional wellness.
Great question. I
What
know you can
is
tell. It's
this?
going to be a great question.
Good. How do you separate those two things out? And can functional wellness coach work with labs?
Okay. This is a compound question. Okay. First of all, functional medicine, the title functional medicine, I really like to keep over in the space of medicine because if you're a functional medicine started in conventional medicine where there were doctors who wanted to take a more functional, broader, integrative approach in looking at medicine through the lens of patient care. And so functional medicine is really medicine with a functional approach, right? Now we have training academies and such that are called the functional medicine, this training academy, functional medicine, this, that, and the other. And I think that is sort of a misnomer because in the health coaching space, I think it's safer. Let me just make it clear it's not illegal to call yourself a functional medicine coach, but I really encourage people to call yourself a functional wellness coach or functional health coach, especially if you're a doctor who's becoming a health coach. Because the whole point is you don't want people in the health coaching space to think you're practicing medicine at all. So, from the title standpoint, functional medicine is best reserved for medicine, and functional health coaching or functional wellness coaching is a title I think that's best in the health coaching space. Now, the second part of your question was about lab tests. Okay. So, lab testing laws are state specific, just like nutrition laws, which means that you have to know what your state allows you to do based upon where you're located. The the other piece that's great is that there are now lab testing companies that allow health coaches to have use physician services to have physicians from those testing companies order labs so that the health coach doesn't use an NPI to order labs. And if the health coach happened to be a doctor who's now a health coach, they can't use their old NPI from their medical practice in their new health coaching practice because that NPI is for patients. It's not for coaching clients. So you would have to use the lab testing through a company like Rupa Health or bazillions of others that are out there that are fantastic. But what you can and can't do depends on your state. So again, Kathy, just like the nutrition laws, there's still 15 states, unfortunately, where the laws are still pretty restrictive for health coaches around one-on-one nutrition assessment and testing and recommendations. And it's a bummer. It's a real bummer. They're making progress in expanding the law, but so in those 15 states, you really can't do lab testing for any clients because if you're located in those 15 states, you're not allowed to do individualized nutrition recommendations, which is usually what lab testing is for, is to determine what's going on with someone individually to be able to provide an individualized recommendation. So the lab testing will depend on where the coach is located. It will depend on what the coach, who the coach is, what are they, or if they're a doctor, or if they're a coach, like what they're doing. And then it will just depend on the laws of the state. It's
Thank you.
not cut and dry, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Even if you use Rupa, if everyone's like, well, I just want to use Rupa everywhere. Well, that's great. But if you're a health coach in Ohio, you still can't do individualized nutrition recommendations. So you're not going to be doing lab testing because you can't share those results or create a nutrition plan around those results for a client, which is a bummer. But one by one, we're working on it. It's just taking some time.
Need a comprehensive solution? The Health Coach Group's Platinum Packages offers a business in a box, providing everything you need to start and grow your wellness practice. Let's build your future together. Visit thehealthcoachgroup.com.
Okay, so getting back to the doctor or the nurse who's going from having and maybe still does have a brick and mortar business where they're working in a clinical space with patients.
Yes.
If they want to start their online business, then their online business should be separate from the clinical practice in the way that maybe it's focused around a book that they wrote or about a course that they're providing and not necessarily around themselves. Would that be a better way to
I think
approach it, a safer
it
way?
depends on what they're doing. Because if they are creating an online course, so it depends, Kathy. I'm not sure if you're referring to an online group course or a hybrid course with group plus one-on-one, or even just a downloadable do-it-yourself online course. But it will really depend. So, for example, Doctors and nurse practitioners and other licensed practitioners are allowed to educate people about concepts through their medical practice even. You can teach people concepts, right? Like you're standing on a stage speaking at an audience of 300 people where you're not taking personalized questions. There's no personalized Q&A. You're just teaching people concepts from a stage. That's what you can do as a doctor, teaching people concepts. And we always think of Mark Hyman as a great example of this. Like he wrote the blood sugar solution and created a blood sugar course. He's had the pagan diet, and he could create a pagan diet course if he wanted. He's not working one-on-one with people at all. If he is, as a doctor, they're coming to the Cleveland Clinic or to Massachusetts where he's licensed. He's just educating people like you were speaking on the stage. So you can do that as a licensed medical practitioner, but there's no one-on-one involved. No one-on-one. Let me say that again.
Okay, so
No one-on-one.
in his case, he's got that new program that's in beta, I think, where he is doing, a series of lab tests and giving them individual results from that. Is it because those are delivered from the lab company instead of as a consultation with him, where he's telling them what to do with the results? That would make that all right?
I don't know enough about the program. My thought would be that one, he would not be providing any personalized information, but the second is I don't think he could order the labs as an ordering physician. So I don't think he would be able to do that. You can't order labs for people who aren't your patients, right? So I would have to know more about that new program. He may be trying to do that under the health coaching sort of space, but I would just need to know more detail, Kathy.
Okay.
The principles that matter, I think, are one, if you're a doctor or a nurse practitioner or someone who orders labs for people, you can't order labs for people who aren't your patients. You can't use your NPI to order labs or write prescriptions or have medical appointments for people who aren't your patients, right? You can't do that in states where you're not licensed. And someone has to actually come and create a patient relationship with you, sign your informed consent, sign your HIPAA forms, become an actual patient, and then you can work with them. Now, you can use telehealth in some states now to even establish a patient relationship, but the patient has to be in a state where you're licensed. It's a medical relationship, a physician-patient relationship, which is protected by privilege. Your medical malpractice covers it. It's an established patient relationship. Within that relationship, as a doctor, nurse practitioner, or naturopathic doctor, a licensed acupuncturist, all the different kinds, chiropractic, you're allowed to order lab tests and things as long as it's in your scope of practice. Like right now, there's a lot of chiropractors that are ordering blood tests for people, but only like 5 or 6 states in the country allow chiropractors to order blood tests. So there's a lot of chiropractors learning how to order blood tests in states where their scope of practice does not allow them to work with lab
I
tests.
wondered about that.
Yeah, that's happening a lot. And I think they just don't know. I think they don't know that they can't do that. So the trick is just like a doctor couldn't order a lab test for their neighbor who they talked to over the fence yesterday if that neighbor wasn't their patient in a patient relationship. So I'll have to look into how Dr. Mark Hyman is doing it. They may be using something like physician services. He may not be giving personalized results. They may be just teaching people in general how to read a lab test or how to read your own lab test. It may be just purely educational and no feedback from them. I don't know. But I would be surprised if he were offering medical advice to people who weren't his patients, calling himself Dr. Hyman and not in a patient relationship.
Yeah,
I wouldn't recommend that if I were his lawyer. Let me just say that.
Yeah.
It makes sense. It just stinks because we really want to be able to do a lot of these things. But as I say to a lot of my clients, I'm actually not telling you anything you didn't already learn in medical school. It's just that nothing has changed and we want it to change, but it really hasn't changed. Doctors can work with patients, doctors can educate people about concepts, or doctors can become a health coach and have a whole separate business as a health coach. But doctors are doctors and health coaches are health coaches, and they are not interchangeable. They're not even like a lot of people think they're twins. I'm like, they're like sisters, but they're not twins. They are not the same at all. In fact, they're two entirely different professions. different requirements, different education, different credentials, different everything. So if you want to do both, you need to have a separate medical practice for a clinic and a separate health coaching practice. And that's separate everything, LLCs, bank accounts, websites, titles, everything. And that's what I teach people is what they need to do so they know how to do this in a way that they won't get in trouble.
Okay. So if you have so you've got a brick and mortar business and you are a doctor who hires health coaches to support their patient.
Mhm.
Um, are the health coaches under the same HIPAA requirements as the doctor?
Probably yes, because if the health coach is working with a medical clinic, then yes, the health coach is going to need to be HIPAA compliant, which means the health coach should be only communicating through the EMR. The health coach should be keeping everything confidential. The health coach needs to, I don't know what they're doing, but like if they have to use, if the EMR doesn't have a video component, then they would have to use HIPAA compliant Zoom with a client, a health coach. We call them clients as health coaches, but it's the patient of the medical practice. The health coach would when doctors are hiring health coaches in many states, I actually recommend that they be hired as an employee, Kathy, not as a contractor.
Really?
Ideally as an employee if possible, because then you're much more protected under the practice than as a contractor, which is a separate business entirely.
And that's safer for the health coach too, isn't it?
It is for both. But the health coach will then not be using their own branding or anything like that. They're doing work for on behalf of the doctor, and the doctor needs to approve the work that the health coach is doing. The health coach is not working independently, basically. The health coach
Yeah.
is just helping to provide accountability to keep someone on track with a health or nutrition program or lifestyle or healthy habits or what a supplement program or whatever that the doctor has prescribed. The health coach is there just to help the person stay on track and be supportive. So the doctor doesn't have to do that part of the work, and the health coach gets to share their knowledge and skills as long as it's not around diseases.
Things have really changed a lot in the time that we've been in the
I
health
know
coaching
it's
business.
gotten stricter, I think, Kathy, because first of all, there's more people doing it than there were 10 years ago
Right.
when we
Before
started
there
this.
weren't any jobs for health coaches, and now there are.
That's correct. And the second thing I think that changed it was with the pandemic, because so many doctors started working from home because they had to if they weren't in primary care or mental health, which was so stressful and traumatic and horrible and unfortunate. And they also were finding ways to do online courses or to make money and serve people. And for a moment in time, HIPAA was relaxed and some of the licensure laws were relaxed, but now they're not
They're
anymore.
tightened back up again the way
They've
that they
tightened
were
up again.
before.
And so we're right back where we were, with the exception of the one thing that's changed, I think, for the better a lot, is that there are now most states now allow you to establish a patient relationship as a doctor through telemedicine.
Right.
Unless there's something that you have to literally like look in their throat or hear their heartbeat or measure their blood pressure or look in their ears. Like if you don't physically have to be in the presence of the person to observe them, or if you would be, not able to adequately assess their situation, then you have to see them in person. But a lot of functional medicine doctors now certainly can do one-on-one consults, even establishing the physician patient relationship through Zoom, where it used to be, it had to be in person. And when I say Zoom, I mean HIPAA compliant Zoom, by the way,
Right.
make sure. But yes,
Right.
it used to
Yeah,
be
and
you
there
had to
didn't used to
establish
be
the
HIPAA.
relationship and then you could talk by
Right.
phone or computer.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that's changed is that, you get the medical papers through, and almost all of the major universities are suggesting that doctors work with health coaches because there's such a shortage of doctors right now.
Which is good. And as long as everyone knows what lane they're supposed to stay in, that's
Right.
because we have doctors like chiropractors might be hiring health coaches, and the health coaches are all ready to talk about nutrition. But in a lot of the states, chiropractors can't talk about nutrition. So
Right.
it gets a little murky.
Yeah.
That's why it's good
Exactly.
to get clear before you start setting up your business, before you even create an LLC, before you do anything. Please, please, please talk to me, talk to another lawyer who actually understands health coaching and medicine. and get everything sorted before you get started. I can't tell you the number of times, Kathy, doctors are like, well, I created a PLLC for my health coaching practice. And I'm like, oh, no, we can't have a professional limited liability company as a health coach. And you can't have doctor in the name of your health coaching practice. And you can't call yourself doctor in your health coaching practice. And like so many things that people just don't realize.
And that's the one thing that gives them the edge too,
I
and they
know.
can't use it.
I know, but it's well, right now I've been telling this story lately. There was a doctor who came to me after the fact. I did not work with her prior, and I certainly didn't represent her before the medical board or anything like that. But she came to me and said, Lisa, oh my goodness, I'm being investigated by the medical board because, and I'm going to change some of the facts just to protect her privacy. But let's say she's a doctor named Dr. Lynn, and she's licensed in Kansas. And Dr. Lynn also created a health coaching practice, which is great, except on her health coaching website, she called herself Dr. Lynn Health Coach, Lynn Health Coach. And she had legal documents in place saying, I'm not practicing medicine. And she had her disclaimers, and that part was great. But she's being investigated by a health coaching client in Colorado the health coaching client in Colorado she was working with, actually, let me rephrase. She was working with a health coaching client in Colorado. Someone found out about this, reported her to the medical board, and she's now being investigated by the state of Colorado medical board for the unlicensed practice of medicine in Colorado. And she was like, but why? I have everywhere on my website. I'm a health coach. I've got all my legal documents saying I'm not practicing medicine. Like, what's going on? Like, why are you coming after me? And they said, well, one of the main reasons is because you're calling yourself Dr. Lynn. You're holding yourself out as a doctor working with someone in the state of Colorado where you're not licensed as a doctor. And Colorado is even super strict in their laws, which go beyond regular laws, saying you can't hold yourself out as a doctor if you're not licensed. And it says you can't even put ND after your name. You can't even have any representation of your education. In a lot of states, Kathy, you can put your educational credentials after your name, the highest degree that you've earned, not your licensure credentials, right? But your degree, your actual degree. Except in Colorado, you cannot say MD or ND or whatever after your name. So now she's being investigated because she's representing herself as a doctor in a state where she's not licensed. So the first thing I said to her was, I'm so sorry this is happening. Second of all, I so wish I had been able to talk with you before you opened your health coaching practice, because the first thing I would have told you is don't call yourself Dr. Lynn. Just say, hi, Lynn, health coach. I got trained through XYZ health coaching program, and I'm here to be a health coach and help you move towards greater health, not to address any diseases, but to help you, take you where you are, meet you where you are, and help you move forward to achieve optimal health, live a better lifestyle, whatever it is that the person wants to do. And that would have helped you. And she's like, I just didn't know. I was like, most people don't. Most people don't know. There's a couple, there's some out there that are trying to sort of buck the system and be like, well, come after me. If I'm going to hold myself out however I want, come after me. But most
I've heard
doctors, I know. And I'm not trying to pass judgment. They're allowed to do whatever they want to do. Personally, I don't think it's energetically the best space to be in when you're knowingly doing something like overtly not legal, but they can choose to take whatever level of risk they want to take. That's their choice. But I think it's just, there's so many things that we can do now, Kathy, that there's so many ways you can do both medicine and coaching. You just have to set it up properly, and you have to get comfortable with understanding you have two different identities. You're not a doctor everywhere you go, right? Like when you're a health coach, you get trained as a health coach, you hold yourself out with the title of a health coach. It's a different profession entirely. Just like if you became an astronaut, you're not going to call yourself a doctor while you're an astronaut, right? You're not. You're not going to own a shoe store and call yourself doctor when you own a high-end shoe store. Like, people need to just understand this is totally different. And the example I love to share is that it's just like the difference between a physical therapist and a personal trainer, right? We all know a physical therapist is licensed. Their job is to work with a diagnosis and basically rehabilitate a part of the body, usually back to its state of wholeness. Like, I had complete tear of my ACL. I had surgery by the surgeon. I went to physical therapy for 12 weeks to get my knee back into working order, essentially. And so you're taking a diagnosis and treating that to create wholeness. Then when you go to a personal trainer, which is similar to a health coach, the personal trainer can ask, of course, have you had any surgeries? Are you on any medication? Do I need to know about any diagnoses you have? Do I need to know about any physical limitations or any breathing limitations? Because before I take you out to train for this marathon, we need to know, like, do you have high blood pressure? Are you injured? And of course, I would say, well, I had surgery 4 weeks ago on my knee. So the personal trainer's job is not to rehabilitate my knee. The personal trainer's job is just to know about my knee so they don't exacerbate or make worse the condition that I had just had treated by my medical team. But that's very clear. We all can kind of wrap our heads around the distinction between a physical trainer and a personal trainer, or a physical therapist and a personal trainer. So this is how I want us to wrap our heads around the difference between a doctor or a nurse practitioner, a chiropractor, an acupuncturist, et cetera, and a health coach. They're very different professions. They both deal with food and lifestyle and supplements sometimes, but they're very different professions. Just like physical therapy and personal training both deal with knees and legs and running and walking and the ability to move, but they're very different professions.
Starting a wellness business can be daunting, but not with the Health Coach Group. From business strategies to consistent income streams, we've got you covered. Let's create a thriving practice together. Visit thehealthcoachgroup.com to learn more.
Okay, so this may be getting down into really ridiculous questions, but I think it's a good one. Okay, so say you have a doctor or a chiropractor or a nurse or some kind of professional that's working with a license, and they have released a book as a doctor or whatever, and so they sell the book, and they've got a health coaching website, and they sell the book on the website.
So, okay, doctors can write books and be Dr. So-and-so writing a book, right? Dr. Mark Hyman writing a book on the blood sugar solution, just say, for example. But you would not sell that book on a health coaching website because the book is Dr. Mark Hyman, right? Selling on a health coaching website. Just like people say, well, Lisa, I wrote a book as a doctor. Can I do a podcast now as a health coach? And I say, no, you keep it separate because it's like you have to sort of choose one or the other. You can have both, but not in the same thing. So, for example, a doctor would not write a book, promote the book, and say, oh, come see me in my health coaching practice. Like, you wouldn't do that. A doctor would say, I wrote a book, come be my patient if you need me to help you as a doctor, right? If they're a health coach, they can write a book and certainly put their credentials in the book, but they're not going to say, as a doctor, I did this, as a doctor, I did this, as a doctor, I did this, as a doctor, I did this. I mean, they can certainly say, I was trained here, I went to school here, I got my degree here. They can state their medical education, but doctors aren't inviting people into a health coaching practice, just like health coaches aren't inviting people into a medical practice. There's two different professions, right?
Okay, so say you have somebody that doesn't necessarily want to health coach, but they want to educate people on their website.
Great.
Can they do that as long as they don't health coach?
A doctor, you mean
Right.
a licensed
Yes.
practitioner?
A licensed
Okay, so
practitioner.
when we talk about educate, yeah, this is great. When we talk about educating, this means that you can do like an educational program. Sometimes in a group setting, usually a group setting, but you can educate people about principles from the book and take people through the book, but you're not going to be doing personalized Q&A. Let me say that again. You're not going to be doing personalized Q&A. And if people say, well, what if I want to have a Q&A sessions on Thursday at 2:00 for an hour? I'm like, great. People can ask you questions. The way that's best is to present the content sort of in the structure of the book. So for example, you could say, week 1, Tuesday, bring all of your questions about everything we covered in chapter 1 on eating healthy greens or something. I'm just making this up. Bring those questions about the content in chapter 1, and I'll be happy to clarify, expound upon things, answer questions. So people can come and ask questions about eating healthy greens, but you're not going to provide them with information addressing their medical diagnosis. So if they come and say, oh, hi, I have a question. Wait, I have a question. I'm on blood thinners. Should I have kale? You made this delicious kale salad recipe. It looks amazing. Can I eat that? The doctor can answer the question the way you would answer it for everyone, which would be to say, what I would say to anyone on blood sugar or blood thinners is that you should not probably eat kale or dark leafy greens, but you need to go talk to your doctor about your specific medical situation, about your specific blood thinners, and figure out what you can and can't eat. But I'm here to tell you that in general, to educate you, most people, I would say, if you're on blood thinners, it's not recommended to eat kale. But you're not going to get into super specifics with that person, like, well, how many blood sugar thinners are you on? And when do you take this? And, it's not about that person individually. It's about answering the question the same way for everyone. That you can do if you have the self-awareness and the self-discipline not to dive into the weeds with that person and answer their specific question. And that's hard for people. Doctors who've been doctors for 20 years, 30 years, this is what they've been doing their whole careers, answering specific questions about specific medical situations. So you have to be sure that you have the self-awareness and self-discipline to realize this person is not my patient. I cannot answer questions about their blood thinners specifically unless I'm saying something to the group, everyone, the same information. They need to go to their doctor. I like to say I am a doctor, but I am not your doctor. And if I am your doctor, you need to come have an appointment with me in a medical appointment where I can assess your specific medical situation and give you personalized recommendations.
I think that should help people to understand a lot the difference between what they can do or can't do in that kind of situation. Now, if they were using a website to educate and maybe sell their book, and they also had a brick and mortar practice, can you on the same website say, set an appointment here?
If it's a medical clinic where you're with a medical website where you're selling your book and say with a button to say set an appointment, yes, as long as the people setting the appointment, you have to be screening. They have to be screened to know if they're in the states where the doctor is licensed. They can't just set an appointment with anyone anywhere. This is a medical practice, remember?
Well, they would have to be local anyway to go to an appointment.
Yep. Or they can come to the state. So the person has to be located in the state where the doctor's licensed, or they have to come to see the doctor at their office in the state where the doctor is licensed.
So if I lived in Nebraska and wanted to see a doctor in Florida, I could do that. It wouldn't matter. The doctor just couldn't come and see me in Nebraska.
Kathy, help me. Where's the doctor located?
The doctor's in Florida. And I'm in Nebraska and I want to see the doctor, but I don't live in Florida. I'm confusing it. I should have said a different state. Yeah.
Of course. And we think about that all the time. It makes sense with hospitals like the Cleveland Clinic or Mayo Clinic. People go to hospitals and go to doctors. They go to cancer specialists in other states. They go to Dana-Farber Hospital. They go to you can go to other states. You just have to see the doctor in that state where the doctor is licensed. So you can go to them, or you can be in the state already where the doctor is located and licensed.
And then just to clarify, during COVID, there were a lot of doctors that could work over state lines just during that period. So if you had a doctor who was doing telehealth with you, like I did, I had a neurologist that was doing telehealth with me when I moved, just because I hadn't found another doctor yet. But if I wanted to continue to go to him, I couldn't do that. I'd have to go back and get, what's it called?
Like you just have to become a patient again, basically.
Right.
So
treatment.
We're now 4 years out from COVID, if you can actually believe it, from when it started, right? 4 years.
Seems like 100 or else none.
It's unbelievable. That was such an experience for our country on so many levels. But okay, so here's the thing. For the first couple of years, and it also depends on the frequency of when you see this doctor and what the doctor is for and such. But by now, I think the general rule is it's time to establish a relationship with a new doctor. You've had plenty of time now. They would probably argue continuity of care is important during a period of time when we can't access a doctor, and a reasonable period after that. So we had COVID for 2 years officially, which is what I go by when we declared it. We undeclared it as a national emergency. And then we have now all of 2023 and part of 2024 So now you definitely want to be finding local doctors. Now it's beyond the reasonable period of time to maintain that relationship with your doctor. There may be extenuating circumstances. I don't want to speak for every single situation under the sun, but in general, if you work with someone online, you now probably need to find a doctor in the state where they're licensed and you're located.
Right. Okay, one more question, and then we'll go back to a health coach who is a health coach only and is not a functional wellness coach or
Sure.
a function or any kind of medical doctor, but they're only a health coach and they want to practice online. They can practice online in any state that is the equal color of their state, as long as that is how they're practicing. And I guess what I'm saying is, like, back when I was in, I think not every, there's a lot more green states now.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing. There's
Yeah.
only 15 red states left, basically.
But if I was in a red state, I'm in a green state now, but if I was in a red
Yes.
state,
Yes.
I would only be able to practice in states that were red too. Is that right? Or can I practice
No,
anywhere?
it gets really confusing, unfortunately. Like if you're in a red state, your laws say that you are not allowed to work with individual. You have to be, let's put it this way, you have to be licensed in that state to provide individualized nutrition recommendations. Every state law is a little different, but assessment, counseling, recommendations, anything that we would consider one-on-one health coaching. Okay. So if you're in a red state, what I always say is please reach out, have a free legal chat. Let me talk with you about what you can and can't do. Because in some states, the restriction is only around one on one work. Some states you can do group programs. Some red states you cannot do individual or group. And one state, my home state of Ohio, which I love dearly, but not in the case of health of nutrition laws, you cannot do any type of one on one or group or even education. So you can't even do a DIY self study course. There are other options for you in red states. I have lots of different options for you, but please reach out before you start doing work. Because what's happening is if you're located in that state, you are sitting in a state now that requires that you have to have a license in that state to hold yourself out and do that work. Just like the example I gave before of the doctor, remember? She was holding herself out in Colorado without being licensed there.
Mhm.
So now you're sitting in your state, your red state. And if you're calling yourself a health coach or a functional medicine practitioner or functional health practitioner or whatever on the health coaching side, nutrition therapy practitioner, you are limited, but there are some options and I can help you find some things you can do.
Okay, that's good. And we've got the information on how they can anybody listening can set a free call with you, right?
Yes, a free 20-minute legal chat with our team. We will help just hear your situation and understand who you are and where you're located and what you want to do. And do you want to work one-on-one or do you want to work in groups or online courses or lab tests or something? Like, who are you and what do you want to do? And then we help point you towards resources that will either answer your questions or have a paid consultation or refer you to someone. It just depends on the situation, or do a legal course or something, but we'll help you get the answers that you need or point you in the right direction.
Very good. Cool. Thank you. And then do you still have the templates?
I
That-
do. Yes.
Yeah.
We
Those
have
are
over
great. They save
50
a
now,
lot of
Kathy.
money.
50 DIY
Do
legal
you
templates.
really? Wow.
50. I know. Now, don't let that overwhelm you if you're hearing that. You don't need all 50 legal templates. People freak out when they hear that. You just need what you need when you need it, right? So there's templates for coaching, like groups and online and one-on-one and hybrid and online retreats or overnight retreats or affiliates or speaking, or there's just so many different situations, website documents, different disclaimers, book disclaimers, like all kinds of things that we can help with. And just so you know, I know you know this, Kathy, but just for people listening who may not be as familiar with me, I always want you to get what you need, but you don't need to get things you already have if they're working for you. I only want you to make sure you're legally covered. Our DIY legal templates will help you with that. But if you already have something and you can tell us about that and we have a sense that it could cover you, we don't want you to have to get it again, right? So we just try to approach it really how we would want to be treated and make sure you're legally covered, but using your resources wisely and appropriately.
Very good. Very good. Well, thank you for being on the call again with me.
Thank you for having me, Kathy. I really appreciate being back. It was fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the show. If you liked what you heard, please give us a 5-star rating or review on iTunes.